Hello there, and welcome to the channel. Yesterday I promised you that I would tell you about movies that I had used that yielded good results, and I would suggest some movies I'd like to try that I haven't had a chance to try with students. So let's start off with a little aside before I get into this list. I don't think the personal life of an actor, a writer, an artist is an automatic disqualification for their work. Okay? So it may seem that I have some strange things on the list, but I'm really more interested about the movie than about some stance that an actor or writer or producer took. And I'm willing to discuss it. I certainly would be willing to discuss it with the kids, but generally speaking, it's the material itself in the movie that I usually center my ideas around and talk about with the students. And for that reason, there are some interesting choices on this list. So I'm going to start with one of the more controversial choices, and that is Mel Gibson's Hamlet. Now, a lot of people have a lot of feelings about Mel Gibson. I have a lot of feelings about Mel Gibson and his political point of view. But that isn't why I would suggest that the Hamlet that he appears in is such a good choice. There are a couple of reasons why. First of all, I think he does a tremendous job, and the rest of the cast is stunningly beautiful in this film. They are just beautiful. But more importantly, this film takes a modern filmmaker's point of view on Shakespeare's original play. Kenneth Branagh has the original folio-produced play that he produced, and I have used it. But it's much more, there's more stuff there. And I think the production is more English and stylized than the Gibson Hamlet. And so I think it works better, especially when we talk about with the students, why did they cut out what they cut out? Because they cut out a bunch of stuff in that script. Fortinbras does not appear in Mel Gibson's Hamlet. So why not? That's something students can wrestle with, and it's really good. Okay? So definitely worth a watch, that one. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead is a great one too, especially if the students have read Hamlet and then they see Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. They understand how one artwork inspires another artwork, and it causes ideas to be discussed in a new and exciting way, especially things like time and physics. You could show Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, or at least part of it, in physics class and really present some interesting physics ideas, because it does that. It presents some really interesting physics ideas. The Crucible. The Crucible was written during a difficult political period, the McCarthy era, and it's about the travesty of the Puritans burning each other or hanging each other. We didn't burn in the United States. We hung each other and pressed each other. So it's a good one too. It's a great one. The kids really react, and Daniel Day-Lewis absolutely chews the scenery. He's so wonderful. The performance is fantastic and way over the top. King Lear. Any King Lear is great. King Lear is great for students to look at, because right at the heart of King Lear is sibling rivalry. And I'm telling you, so many young people want to and need to discuss the issues of sibling rivalry and the way, related siblings relate to each other. West Side Story. It's a great choice for American Lit examination of Romeo and Juliet. right? It's inspired by Romeo and Juliet and set in a different time and place. The kids love it, and of course, it's teen love. Midsummer Night's Dream. Joseph Papp directed a production of Midsummer Night's Dream in Central Park. If you can get that video, and it's hard to get, you have to go to the media specialist in your district to get that video, because it is not available just any old place. If you can get a hold of that production, it is remarkable, and it is the funny version that Shakespeare wrote of Romeo and Juliet, and it's fantastic to set reading Romeo and Juliet next to watching Midsummer Night's Dream, because it's the same story from two very different perspectives, and it lampoons a lot of things that students want to lampoon in Romeo and Juliet, and it does it. So it really allows them to talk about things like satire and comedy, and also it's just wonderful. I never had a failure with that one. Romeo and Juliet is a good one to watch. The Romeo and Juliet I watched, terrible, but it still succeeded in piquing students' interest in discussing things like young love. Fantasia. I showed a couple of bits of Fantasia to my students. Now, Fantasia has almost no dialogue. It does have these little interstitial things where people talk, both in the original Fantasia and the Fantasia 2000. And it is wonderful to have students look at an artist's interpretation of music and then start to talk about how do these interpretations evolve? How do they come out of what we're listening to? And it's a really wonderful challenge for students to be thinking about. The Viking Sword. A PBS documentary came out a while back while I was teaching Brit Lit called The Viking Sword. And the Viking Sword is based on a type of sword from early European history called the Ulfberht. This documentary is so wonderful. There's just endless material in there to talk about. It would be good for a science class. It would be good for a history class. It's good for a lit class. It is full of information, and it's full of humans interacting with that information in a real, it'd even be good for a business class, because there's one guy in there that makes an argument about it's copyright infringement sort of going on. It's fantastic. The Viking Sword, about the Ulfberht. Another documentary that I had the students watch was one called Incident at Ogallala, which was about the FBI agents who were murdered on the Sioux Reservation in Ogallala. And wow, the kids absolutely get completely engaged in this because, first off, it's true crime. But second off, it really does talk about a historic period. It talks about how where you are in this situation definitely determines how you see it. It talks about the different ways that the lawyers approached pursuing the case. And it's contemporary history because President Biden did pardon or commute the sentence of the man convicted of those murders, Leonard Peltier. It's absolutely a wonderful, wonderful documentary to show students. This one's going to sound crazy. The Last Waltz was a documentary about the end of a band called The Band. And Martin Scorsese, it was a really early Martin Scorsese film. But what it does is it very successfully reveals how different movements in art come about. And he does it in a really interesting way, and the concert does it as an interesting way because the different artists that are presented are from different areas of the country, represent different artistic and musical movements. It was a very successful video for my kids to look at and write about. And finally, on this list of successful, my 13th film that I used and I found successful was shocking in its success, and it's Oedipus. There was a BBC production of Oedipus the King where they wore the robes and these big masks, and the delivery was like this. It was so was so weird. It was so weird. So weird. And I warned the kids, I said, look, I saw this, I saw it on public television, and I just laughed and laughed for the first 15 minutes, and then I was totally caught by the story, and it really affected me. It was really interesting and potent. So I recommend finding that production of Oedipus the King and using it. The students responded to it in so many positive ways, and it was really, I mean, when you see it, you'll see everything is done on the front foot. Everything is big and weird, but it's like freaking successful. Now, movies that I wish I could have used in class and movies that I think might appear well in other classes. The Right Stuff and Hidden Figures are both about the time period of the space race. Students now do not know the space race. It is too recent in history to have figured in a lot of curricula, but it is really an important time period, and it brings to bear all the stuff that's going on right now, but it's 50 years ago. So I think, you know, a half a century ago, it's one of those things where students don't know enough about it, and they should know more. All of us benefit from knowing these things that are recent history, that our folks know about, or our grandparents know about, and we don't. So both The Right Stuff and Hidden Figures have great material in them to talk about. There's a movie called The Tree of Life, which is so weird. I so wish I could be teaching again, just for the sake of showing Tree of Life to senior students or college freshman students and having them discuss it, because it is out there. It is out there. And it's definitely made to yield these interesting examinations of metaphysics, these interesting examinations of things like biology, of the way humans interact with each other and understand each other, and the eternal. So Tree of Life, wow. There's a movie called Proof, which is about a mathematician whose mind is going. He dies in the story. That's you know, it's an old movie, but it's definitely would be great to talk about a calculus class with, because it's full of these ideas about modern and older types of mathematics. I would love to set up a class where we compare a whole bunch of different scenes from all the different adaptations of Pride and Prejudice. Imagine such a class where you could take the scenes, like even just the openings. If you lined up the openings of Pride and Prejudice, you could have such a wonderful time talking about, wow, how differently these different filmmakers translated one art into a different medium and what choices they made. Seabiscuit. Seabiscuit is kind of a weird movie in that it's a cross between a documentary and an entertaining film. I would love to get the opportunity to teach a class where I could figure out a way to include Seabiscuit as part of the curriculum, because I think it's just built for discussion. Inherit the Wind. If I were teaching biology, Inherit the Wind would be the movie I would have in there, because I would want students to see how these kind of curriculum decisions can impinge on the larger world. 1776 is a musical about the founding of the Americas. If there is a musical that should be in every history class other than Hamilton, it's definitely 1776. If I were a history teacher, Hamilton would be 1776 would be first, and then Hamilton. Those two films, one at near the beginning, one near the end, and we would discuss it. I mean, that's, to me, worth whatever you would get out of it. Win-Win. This is a McCarthy film. I think his first name is Tom. It's so good. And it's about being a teenager in a broken home. And it's about the smaller ethics of day-to-day life. It is a wonderful, wonderful film, but it would also be an excellent film for students who live in troubled communities or in troubled homes. It's great. It's a great movie. Glory. I've never shown it, but all of the teachers I know who showed Glory said it was worth the time it took to show it to the class. That so much good came out of watching it and discussing it that it was definitely worth the time. I could go on, but I think those are good numbers to stop on, and I think that's a good list for the rest of the year. Kids, go look at those films again. You know, I think I may watch a couple of them just for fun. I do love all of the films on this list. I hope you have a glorious rest of the day, and I hope I see you soon. No, you see me soon, you gorgeous people.